again, the master of fun and wonder, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Are you there, Rob?
I am here. I'm very excited to introduce our next guest because, as people might not know, or if they do know, America just returned to space. NASA and SpaceX launched the Dragon Crew capsule. We are now in orbit. For the first time in 9 years, Americans are in space from American soil. So I cannot think of anything better than to talk to our next guest about a show that I dearly, dearly love. I'm very honored to be talking to Maxwell Jenkins. I don't know if he goes by Max, but he's coming out in Good Joe Bell with Mark Wahlberg and Connie Britton, who I have a massive crush on, so I'm happy that he's doing that. But he's also the heart and soul of Netflix's Lost in Space, which is the reboot, of course, of the Irwin Allen series of the 1960s. And boy, Will Robinson, I can't wait to talk to him. So give a great round of applause to Mr. Maxwell Jenkins. Maxwell, do you go by Max or Maxwell?
Anything is good. My friends call me Max, so you can call me Max.
All right, Max, thank you very much. First of all, thank you for being here. And it's amazing that I'm talking to you right as America herself has made it back to space.
I know. I was actually, okay, full honesty, like a minute before I got on here, like I had been watching
Dude, so was I.
So I was like, oh my goodness. And then they brought me in just right now. And I was like, oh God, I got to put this away.
Amazing. Well, we only have half an hour and everybody wants to hear from you. Reading a little bit about you, you started performing when you were 3 because your dad was in the circus?
So my mom and my dad, we run a circus here in Chicago, but we've toured from all around the world. We've gone to Montreal, and they used to play in Europe. I remember they did actually a festival in Germany. I remember hearing stories about it with this really cool band called Liquid Soul. I don't know if you heard of them, but they're really great. And so I kind of grew up surrounded by these amazing musicians and performers from all over the world.
So was it something that obviously it was in your blood? You were born into a performing family and you've been a performer ever since and working on your craft. You're like many people are just starting out in their careers, but you've been doing this for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, well, actually, when I didn't really plan on being an actor. I was always like doing circus and music. Those were my 2 things. And then when I was about 8 years old, actually, my mom was an actress, but my parents didn't want me in the business. They're like, it's bad business for kids. You don't want to be in it. And then I think her agent was like, you know what, why don't we just send him out for this interview? So I went out for an interview once, and then the next thing I knew, I was on a plane to LA for a screen test. So it kind of just went from there. But yeah, I started out in the circus. So I've been performing ever since I was practically born.
Amazing. Well, I grew up a big geek, and you've been in 2 shows now, Sense8, that the Wachowskis created, and Michael Straczynski, who was from Babylon 5, worked on, obviously, and now you're in Lost in Space. I have to say, Lost in Space is a tremendous, tremendous show. I love it so much. And I think what's so great about it is your ensemble cast, you and your parents and the Robinson family. How did you come to get the job? How was it? An audition? I mean, how'd you find yourself on that show?
Yeah, I mean, so that's actually a funny story because I almost wasn't even going to be Will Robinson. So I came home from school one day. I go to my public school a few blocks away, and I'm walking. I was actually unicycling, I think, because I used to unicycle.
Of course you did. The circus.
So I come home and I walk upstairs because I'm like, hey, Mom, how you doing? I'm back from school. And I see the script on the desk. So I'm reading through it and I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. I get the little kid gets a robot best friend and gets to fly a spaceship. Like growing up as a sci-fi fan and especially like an Iron Giant fan, I was like,
such a good movie.
Oh my God, E.T. I also, even though it's not sci-fi, I'm pretty fond of the Black Stallion. So like growing up surrounded by these movies and interests, I was like, this is the perfect show. And she goes, oh yeah, well, I mean, I got that 2 weeks ago, but we passed on it because it takes you away from home too long. And I was like, what? What? So she's like, I mean, we can call and see if it's not too late. So I went on tape for it, and it kind of just went from there. And I met Zach and Burke and Matt, and we really kind of hit it off from there. And now I'm Will Robinson.
You are Will, and you're a fantastic Will Robinson, and your performance is really, I think, the heart of the show, and the show has a lot of heart. I mean, we don't see, like, it's funny to say this about, because I love sci-fi, but I love the wholesome family nature of Lost in Space, and I'm the first guy that wants to see blood and guts and laser fire and aliens tearing people to shreds. But I think what's so great about your show is it is such a family. The bond that you all have is so great. What is it like working with your fellow actors? Is it the same, like, to watch the show? Is it the same to make the show? Do you guys get along, and is everybody like they are on camera? Like, do you have that familial atmosphere on set?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like since from the beginning we kind of hit it off. It didn't take long to really bond, and people on the show, I feel like, are cast really perfectly. They embody who they are in a sense.
Right.
Like Molly and Toby really do become kind of like the parents on set. And Toby, like, even though he does play a super like intense Navy SEAL guy, you
Right.
kind of do John crack a few jokes here and there. And that is definitely an aspect that Toby has, even though in real life Toby is a huge jokester. And me and Parker is, I really call Parker my aunt, even though we don't get along in the show that well. In real life, me and Parker are super close. And Ignacio is like my big brother. Like, we text every other day, if not every day.
Right. Well, I mean, let me ask you, one of the things about the show that I love so much is that the danger, literally, danger, Will Robinson, it gets piled on. I mean, it gets to the point where you break a sweat watching the show because it gets so tense. When you guys are making it, it seems to be like it's a pretty big production. I mean, there's a lot of effects work. There's a lot of set pieces. You're on location a lot of the time too, if you're not on a space station or in the Jupiter 2 or something. Is it a hard show for you because you have a lot of the responsibility of carrying the weight? I mean, really, there's a lot of the show that revolves around you. Is it tough? Is it a grind? Is it hard to make?
I mean, I feel like it is it's really hard work, but without like the crew and my amazing castmates, they really make the show what it is. Cause without the crew, we wouldn't get anything done. It really does take a village to make the show what it is. So right. I feel like, yes, it's hard work, and we do film in some like pretty intense locations. Like they're filming in Vancouver. Vancouver is arguably my favorite city in the world. But it rains a lot there, and we were filming there during the rainy season. So we once went, like, I think it was something like, oh God, it must have been like 40 something days without seeing the sun. It was intense. It was the rainiest season they had since like the 1980s, which for me is a long time ago. So,
right.
But yeah, I would say that it has its challenges, but with the crew there, it makes it super fun and really enjoyable.
Right. Now, how long does a season, like you've done 2 seasons now, do you shoot the whole season? Do you go into production and shoot everything, all the episodes at once? Or is it broken up where you go to location and then you go back to the sound stage? I mean, how long do you work on a season for?
Yeah, so when we're filming in season 1, when we were filming season 1, we did it all in order. So we would do episode 1, episode 2, episode 3.
Wow.
Well, generally in order. We would have to go back for some reshoots. Actually, for the tree scene from episode 1,
yeah,
we filmed that 5 times over the course of like 6 or 7 months. That was pretty intense. Like, we once filmed it out in the forest, and it was pretty dang cold. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Right.
Because it's a night shoot and we're outside, so it was tough. But we also filmed that on a soundstage and stuff. But for season 2, it was definitely kind of jumbled around. We started with episode 6 and 7, then we went to like episode, I want to say 1, 2, then to episode 8, then to episode 3. It was kind of jumbled around in there. But yeah, I would say it kind of changes around depending on what you have to reshoot and stuff like that.
Right. When you were doing episode 2 there's a lot of water in the first half of episode 2. Was that? How did you guys do that? Were you ever were you in tanks? Were you out on the water for real? Like, it looked like it was pretty harrowing at certain points.
So I was lucky. Me and Toby got lucky because we both get hurt in the episode. So we're below deck for a large portion of it.
Right.
But so we kind of did a combination of tank, VFX, and actually like being out on top of the Jupiter 2. So they built the top of the Jupiter 2 and they put masts up. Well, they green screened the top part of the mast, but there were parts of it that were up, and they did the steering wheel and everything. So we did, and they had like 6 water cannons that they would shoot at you, and you were getting hit with a wave. Like, and in those spacesuits, like, it's not the easiest to move around.
Right.
So you're being hit and you're like, oh. But thank goodness we got these we have these like kind of boots, and they're actual like really like great hiking boots that we wear, our spacesuit boots.
Right.
So walking around that deck wasn't too bad. And then Molly, Taylor, Mina, and Parker, they actually had to, so they had to film out there at night a few times, and I cannot imagine. Oh my gosh, I remember like being at a lunch break and or staying after just to like getting out of my wardrobe and stuff, and I'll just see them out there just getting hit with water. I'm like, oh my God, they're like superheroes. That's insane.
Well, obviously I've got to ask you about the robot itself. I mean, I know it's a combination of things to bring it to life, but I guess to start with, is it difficult to create for you as an actor an emotional bond with something that isn't really real? Like, you're supposed to have this relationship with this robot, and of course, it's special effects and people working it. And is that hard? Is it hard to like elicit to bring up emotion from deep inside of you as an actor?
I mean, it is challenging, but I would say that. Oh, thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Sophia. I like the shirt too. But I would say that it is pretty challenging. It was challenging in the beginning, I would say.
Right.
Like getting used to acting off, like sometimes it's just a tennis ball on a stick. Like for the tree scene, it's just a tennis ball on a stick, and they're like, great, cry and act afraid of that thing. So I would say it was difficult in the beginning, but then I kind of put the connection between between the robot and my 2 rescued well, actually 3 rescued Pipples now, but back then I had 2. So
what are their names? What are your Pipples' names?
Well, back then it was Rosie, Ray, and Junebug, and recently Junebug actually passed away. But we did adopt 2 new puppies, Ricky and Bobby, for any Talladega Nights fans out there. Yeah, they're amazing. They're actually downstairs. They're taking a nap. But I kind of put it together because the robot is kind of this fierce, kind of scary looking creature, but it ends up being a great best friend. Sometimes the friends that you never had, and really a great protector. They're always loyal. They're there for you, and that's what my 2 Pipples are. So I feel like drawing that connection made it easier to act off of the robot.
That's a great insight in terms of the craft of acting. I thought that's good. That's good. So when you're there, when you're working with, because a lot of people don't understand that you can't work a full 12 hours, can you?
No, because I'm a minor. So thank goodness SAG has really great child labor laws, and they're really great about making sure I get my school, making sure I'm not overworked,
And that would be the Screen Actors Guild that protects actors. And you have to go to school on set, don't you?
I do. So school is 3 hours a day, but you can get it in like 20-minute increments. So it's a bit challenging to like do that.
Right.
And, like one minute you're being chased by a horde of angry robots, then the next minute you're doing trig. So
I hated trigonometry.
It's a bit challenging.
I hated it. So you're going to do a 3rd and final season of the show, which is a bummer. I'm like, why do they have to cancel after 3 seasons? I mean, I know I wish it could go on because I love the show, but where are you in terms of product? Well, obviously you're not in production at all because nobody is now, but how far along is season 3? Have all the scripts been written? Have you shot anything from season 3 yet?
Yeah, so I actually, being an actor, I feel like we're kind of like the last to know.
Right. Right. And you are.
We are. Like, I actually filming season 2. I got the script for episode 7 2 days before we went to go film it. So I was kind of like, whoa. But from what I've heard and what I've talked with Zach, our showrunner, about, and Burke and Matt, our creators and writers, from what I've heard is like season 2 is going to be really epic, and it's going to be like well worth the wait. Till 2021 is what they're hoping for.
Right.
And I don't know much, but like some questions that I want answered are like, what's the Fortuna? Like, why is it out here? What happened to this planet? Did the robot come? Like, I genuinely want to know, because being a sci-fi fan, I'm a fan of the show.
Right.
So I kind of consider myself like, watching Lost in Space, I kind of lose track that I'm in the show, and I'm like, oh man, I'm such a big fan of this show. Like, who's in it? Like, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there are some questions that I want answered that hopefully Matt and Burke answer, which I'm sure they will, because they're phenomenal writers.
Well, I have the same questions that you have. By the way, Sabrina Mora says you're her idol and she loves you so much.
Oh my God.
I'm just reading that on the live chat. So I figured, why not throw that your way?
Thank you so much.
Now, I'm curious, when you finally see the finished show, obviously what people a lot of the time don't understand is actors come, you do your work, and you leave, but then there's so much post-production time from the time you've actually shot the show to when you can actually see it. Do you ever get to go? Do they invite you to the edit bay? Do they ever get to do they show you things, or do you have to wait before you see it? Maybe Netflix has a premiere. Do you have to wait till it all drops on Netflix so you can binge it with everybody else?
Right. So obviously, like, sometimes when I'm visiting, like when I'm in LA, because I live in Chicago. Speaking of which, are you guys at Chicago Comics right now?
I'm in Los Angeles right now.
Oh, okay. Well, anyways, I remember the guy before said that he was at Chicago Comics.
Yeah, Jeff Garland. Yeah,
Chicago Comics yesterday, picking up a manga, because I've been getting into more of that manga and Japanese kind of pop culture stuff.
Yeah. What
anyways,
was it? What manga would you pick up?
It's Samurai 8.
Yeah.
Yeah. Such a great. I started reading yesterday. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's really good, because I'm a huge Naruto fan. And the guy who created Naruto did Samurai 8, so I was really interested in that. But anyways, sometimes I'll visit out in LA and I'll stop by the VFX studio to like get a sneak peek at what they're doing. But like, these guys are really working up until like the moment before it launches. So, so the first time I'll really see the finished product in its entirety is when everyone else sees it.
Right.
So, like, I stayed up because it launches at 2 a.m. in the morning here in Chicago, because it launches at midnight Pacific time.
Yeah.
So me and my sister, and pre-Corona times, my friends, because you'd have sleepover, they'd come over and we would wait till 2 a.m. to watch it.
Did you stay up all night and binge as many episodes as you could?
So I didn't, because I made it till episode 7, and then I was like, you know what? I know what happens next, and I fell asleep. I'm gonna be honest, because it was like, what? It's got to be like the crack of dawn then. So right. I was like, I'm gonna go to bed. But then I woke up, and then like a couple hours later, I was binging it. Episode 10 actually was my favorite episode, because we got to work with David Nutter. So I was super stoked to getting to that episode.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. I mean, he goes all the way back to, he was directing X-Files episodes in the 90s.
Right.
He's directed Game of Thrones. I mean, he's one of the great sci-fi, fantasy, and even horror directors working in television. The guy's a master.
Oh, he's amazing. Yeah, and working with David was really was really spectacular. I learned so much on that episode. And actually filming season 2, he wasn't a director for season 2 with us because schedules didn't work out, I guess. But I actually got to he came and visited Vancouver, and he stopped by and we had brunch, and it was really good to reconnect with David because we're in contact today. David's a really good friend. So.
Well, that's great to hear. Now, I guess I can ask you, do we only have to talk about Lost in Space? I mean, can I ask you about this new movie that you have coming out, working with Mark Wahlberg and Connie Britton, who I've been madly in love with her since Friday Night Lights. What's your new movie about, and what can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so this new movie is based on a true story about Jaden Bell, and he is a teenager in Oregon, and he is tragically bullied for being openly gay, and unfortunately he takes his own life. So I play his younger brother, and Jaden's played by the fantastic Reed Miller, who we really bonded over. He's like a brother to me. But yeah, it's really an important story about how the family deals with it, the events leading up, and all of it. And I feel like it's an important story for the times we're in now, because we really need to teach tolerance and accepting others, even though they're different. I think that's really important. So yeah, it's a really great film, and the script was amazing. I actually got to talk with the real Joseph Bell, Jaden's younger brother.
Wow.
And he is really an amazing guy. And he was like, there's some stuff that, if you don't mind, I'd like you to talk to the writers about. And the writers were totally, the director, Reynaldo Green, was totally open to incorporating it in. And it was just a really amazing process. I hadn't really done a film for years since then. So being able to do another film and being able to do a film like that was truly an amazing experience.
Yeah, and what was it like? I mean, I have to ask, I've seen Mark Wahlberg growing up myself. I mean, he used to be Marky Mark from the Funky Bunch, and he's turned into such a great actor, and he's producing now. And what was it like working with him?
Yeah, Mark is really, first of all, an amazing actor, and on the other hand, an amazing teacher, and most importantly, an amazing human being. He's so kind. From like the day that I got there, we were filming a pretty challenging scene, and it was my first day. I was a bit nervous. I hadn't done a film in a while since I had done one with Gerard Butler, who is really still a great friend. I was talking with him the other day, but I was a bit nervous, and he really welcomed me into the crew and into the cast, and yeah, he was an amazing human being. And actually, I was a bit intimidated too, because I'm a huge Mark Wahlberg fan. The Fighter is one of my favorite movies.
So good.
Actually, two of my favorite boxing movies. Well, Rocky, my all-time favorite, but The Fighter and Southpaw with Jake Gyllenhaal.
Another great movie.
Jake Gyllenhaal, producer on the show, on the movie. Unfortunately, I didn't get to meet him, but hopefully one day, because Mysterio. Right?
Right. A huge. If you haven't seen a movie called Nightcrawler, Jake Gyllenhaal stars in that amazing performance. Well, let me ask you, when you finally work with somebody that you're a fan of, do you ever just totally fanboy out? Is it hard? Because you have to be yeah, we're working together. We're on the same movie together. You got to be all cool. But do you ever take somebody aside and go, dude, I gotta tell you, I loved you in this. Do you ever do that?
Yeah, but it's more instead of being dude, I gotta tell you this, I'm not a cool person. So it's more oh my God, I love you. Oh my God. I start sweating, and I'm I can't talk. So for a sci-fi instance, Mark Hamill came to our premiere.
Oh my God.
Well, wow. Because Bill Mumy is who played the original Will Robinson.
Yeah.
I'm proud to call him a really amazing friend and mentor. And I don't think that the way my version of Will Robinson was portrayed, it wouldn't be the same without him. Because when he came and visited set, first of all, he made Will Robinson who he is. Second of all, he really passed the torch in a really generous way, and he also gave me some really insightful pieces into Will Robinson. Like, Will Robinson can never be negative. He always has to be that kind of ray of positivity, and always has to be hope. Like, they're in a pretty dire situation, and Will Robinson is kind of that hope in that world. And Bill really brought that in. But I remember having dinner with Bill like a week before the premiere, because I was in LA. We had just gotten back from going to Dubai to Tokyo to Dubai, then to LA, and I was having dinner with Bill at his place, and he goes, "So Max, I have some news for you. At the premiere, I invited Mark." I'm like, "Mark? Who's Mark?" And he goes, "Oh, Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker." And I go, "No, you didn't. No, you didn't." So I mean, I will always be in debt to Bill for that. And Mark was such a cool dude. He actually cried. I remember sitting in front of him, and he cried at the end of the first episode and going, "Okay, now I know we have a pretty good show. If Mark Hamill can cry about this show, I know it's pretty good."
Wow.
So I was like, oh my, and Mark Hamill was such an amazing dude, like so kind. But I remember meeting him and being like, "Hey, I'm gonna be honest with you, man. I'm a really big fan." Like, I'm getting giddy just thinking about that moment. It was so cool.
Well, isn't it great though when someone like Mark Hamill can watch your work and say, I love this, it made me cry? I mean, that's like the best thing when someone sees something that you've made, isn't it? When they tell you how much they like it.
Yeah, I mean, the two biggest kind of compliments that I've ever gotten were when Bill Mumy pulled me aside and said, I don't even know if Bill remembers this, but Bill, he goes, "Max, I just have to say you're doing a great job as Will Robinson, and I couldn't be prouder." And I mean, that's when I was like, oh my God, he thinks I'm doing good. He thinks I'm doing good. So like that kind of was kind of a passing the torch moment for me.
Right.
And Bill will always be Will Robinson. He will always be the Will Robinson. But it's nice to know that I have his support. And then the other moment was when Mark Hamill cried at the end of the first episode.
That it's amazing. Now I gotta tell you, if knowing that you know Bill Mumy, have you ever watched his Twilight Zone episodes? He was in the original.
But I've seen all of these photos from him on that show, and I've met a few of his castmates and stuff like that.
You have to watch his episode called "It's a Good Life."
It's a Good Life.
Where It's a Good Life, where he plays let's just say, not a very nice kid.
Okay.
And it's only like 25 minutes long, but it's so, early golden age of the Twilight Zone ran from 59 to 64. So it's black and white. Mm-hmm. And like the first season, Lost in Space. And he is phenomenal. When you watch it, it's like, this is one of the greatest performances I've ever seen. And so that way you can talk to him about it, because it's pretty famous you'll love it.
I just want, I know we're running short on time, but I just wanted to say, what was it like working on Star Trek? You were kind of a... I was a documentarian, so I got to tell you what I did. For the 25th anniversary of Star Trek, I got to sit down and interview the entire cast, the entire crew of the Enterprise D. Patrick Stewart. So there I was moderating a roundtable conversation. I could barely... We were doing this in Calgary, up in Canada. I could barely speak. Yeah, it's great. It's beautiful. And I'm just sitting there because I did all the documentaries on the making of Star Trek: The Next Generation that were on the Blu-ray. So I had to sit down. And these were long form documentaries. So I would sit down with each cast member for hours at a time and interview them. Wow. And then when we were going to do this, I said, we should get everybody together to have this roundtable conversation. And they're all like, well, you should host it. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not an actor. I mean, I'm not. They're like, yeah, but you know everything about Star Trek. They'll love you. You've already been talking to them. And it was like, it was my little kid self that has been watching Star Trek my whole life. When I got to sit down, I'm like, oh my God. But I have to tell you, I did write and direct a movie that starred William Shatner called Free Enterprise. It's a comedy. Oh my God.
And it was like, William Shatner, Captain Kirk, is my idol, and I had to sit down and compose myself and directing him and telling him what to do. And it was we could never tell him we were Star Trek fans because then he would think we were freaks and he wouldn't have taken it seriously. But he was amazing to work with. It was amazing to direct William Shatner. It was a dream come true. But another dream come true was meeting you, Max, because I love your show and it was so much fun to talk to you. And I wish you all the best success. I can't wait to see your new movie. I was so honored when I saw your name. I'm like, oh, I'd love to talk to this guy. So your show is amazing, and I know we have to go now, but thank you very much for being on this show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really amazing.
Thank you, Max and Robert. We cannot thank you both enough. I got to say, Max, you got the most views of entire Mainframe Comic-Con. Your fan base is so loyal. So big shout out to all Max's fans who are in the chat. Thank you guys so much. I couldn't be here without you guys. So I love you. All right. Well, guys, we're going to keep this rolling right along. I got to do a couple of house cleaning things here real quick. Great.